Okay, so picture this. You take a complex, heavy computation that normally takes an entire hour to run on a standard computer, and you finish it in just 30 seconds. We are talking about a staggering 120 times speedup. That is exactly what researchers actually achieved when they unleashed visual molecular dynamics software onto modern graphics processing units, or GPUs. But how did they actually pull that off?
Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are going under the hood, literally tearing down the engine of GPU optimization. We aren't just going to look at some surface-level speedups. We are going to understand exactly how molecular dynamics unlocks the kind of raw computing power that accelerates real-world scientific discovery.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to cover the GPU speed revolution, how bins and spatial sorting work, computing molecular orbitals, the whole CPU-GPU symbiosis thing, and finally, dynamic multi-GPU balancing.
All right, Section 1, the GPU speed revolution. When researchers at the Beckman Institute first started moving these massive, heavily paralleled calculations over from a single CPU core to a GPU, the initial results were just wild. Gas migration pathway imaging, that executed 20 to 30 times faster. Ion placement, boom, up to 44 times faster. And calculating massive electrostatic fields easily matched that leap, running 44 times faster than peak CPU performance.
But, here is the secret. A GPU is basically a massively paralleled coprocessor. It's an absolute beast of a chip, but it is really just raw potential, right? If you just take your old CPU code and toss it at the GPU, you don't get magic speed. You just get a massive traffic jam in your system's memory. To actually harness that power, you need some serious algorithmic finesse.
Which brings us to Section 2, bins and spatial sorting.
So calculating these electrostatic potential maps is super demanding because, well, you're tracking so many moving parts at once. To feed this data to the GPU without choking it, researchers use this clever trick called spatial hashing. Instead of just reading down a random list of data, atoms get sorted into fixed-size bins based strictly on their physical coordinates in 3D space. Let's break down how that actually works. The grid gets divided up into these fixed-sized bins, and each one holds up to exactly 8 atoms. And for every single atom, the system stores exactly 4 values: its x, y, and z coordinates, plus its electrical charge. Now, why be so incredibly rigid about this? Because this exact structure guarantees what's called GPU memory coalescing. Basically, when the GPU asks for data, it grabs a perfectly sized continuous chunk of memory all at once, rather than pinging the system with thousands of tiny, inefficient requests that just bottleneck the whole process.
And this setup, it causes a massive paradigm shift in how the algorithm handles data. See, older CPU codes usually use a scatter method. You calculate a value and try to scatter the results outward. But on a GPU, that causes massive data collisions. So they just flip the script and use a gather approach instead. Lattice points simply gather the potentials from those surrounding atom bins right into shared memory. No collisions, no bottlenecks, just incredibly smooth, fast computation.
Moving right along to Section 3, computing molecular orbitals. Now, what's really interesting about this part is that this is where all that abstract code and memory hashing translates into actual, beautiful 3D molecular structures. To actually generate these molecular orbital lattices, the software has to calculate some pretty complex radial distribution functions and wave function coefficients for literally every single point on a 3D grid.
And to hit peak efficiency here, you have to follow some incredibly strict design rules. You've got to aggressively leverage your on-chip registers, shared memory, and L1 cache to basically artificially amplify your memory bandwidth. You absolutely have to pre-process, sort, and compress your data before the GPU even touches it. Ultimately, it's all about building perfectly tiled, blocked data structures that the hardware can just digest instantly.
But hardware evolves, and that completely changes how we write this code. Back in the day, early CUDA optimization meant you had to explicitly write all this tedious control code just to load data tiles into shared memory on demand. But then NVIDIA introduced the Fermi architecture, and suddenly developers could just leverage the L1 cache directly. Relying on the hardware itself like this radically simplifies the code. It handles weird, unpredictable problem sizes beautifully, and it still delivers that blindingly fast performance.
All right. Section 4, the CPU-GPU symbiosis.
So I like to think of this as a classic manager and worker relationship. GPUs are like massive factory floors, right? They perform best when the work is perfectly uniform and neatly divided. But as we know, real-world data is messy. So we use a strategy called regularizing the workload. The CPU steps in as the manager. It handles all the messy paperwork, the weird exceptions, the unusual work units, the memory bins that happen to overflow. And because the CPU takes care of all those irregular tasks, asynchronously in the background, the GPU is free to just relentlessly churn through the bulk of the uniform data concurrently, completely unimpeded and running at absolute peak performance.
And finally, Section 5, Dynamic Multi-GPU Balancing.
Okay, so we've optimized on GPU, but scaling this up introduces probably the biggest hurdle in supercomputing. A lot of early code made a fatal flaw. It just assumed all GPUs in a server were perfectly identical. But in the real world, modern host machines contain a wild diversity of hardware. You might have an older card with 14 streaming multiprocessors sitting right next to a brand new flagship card with 30. If you use static decomposition, meaning you just blindly split the work exactly in half before you start, that fast GPU is going to finish early and just sit there twiddling its thumbs while the slow one painfully chugs along.
So the fix for this is dynamic work distribution. They take that 3D molecular orbital lattice and slice it down into 2D planes. Then, a pool of GPU worker threads runs this continuous loop. Using a shared iterator, whenever any GPU finishes a tile, it just reaches right back into the pool and grabs the next one on demand. So a flagship GPU might chew through 80% of the tiles, while an older one handles 20%. But the entire load balances out perfectly and automatically in real time.
And this brilliantly illustrates the final results. Computing molecular orbitals for a C60 molecule takes a single CPU core over 30 seconds. A Quadro GPU drops that to 0.38 seconds. A GTX 480 down to 0.25. So there is our 120 times speed up from earlier. But when you use dynamic load balancing to throw 3 completely different mismatched GPU architectures at the exact same problem simultaneously, the runtime literally plummets to a blistering 0.114 seconds. That's a 268 times speedup, and it is operating at 91% of perfect theoretical efficiency.
Which really leaves us with kind of a mind-blowing question. If dynamic balancing can unite generations of completely mismatched hardware in a single machine at 91% ideal efficiency, what is stopping us from virtualizing all the idle compute power across the entire globe into one massive, unified, load-balanced supercomputer? It's a seriously thrilling possibility for the future of high-performance computing. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep exploring.